Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, aka Big Head. Hey, welcome back to Big Head on the Block. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to a couple of guys. Aaron Arnett, I appreciate you listening. For those who don't know, Aaron and I used to work together at the Baton Rouge City Police Department. He's out there, over-the-road truck driver now. Be safe, my brother. It was a pleasure working with you back in the day. Also, to Little Rock, I can't say his name, but he knows who he is. I hope you're listening out there, and it was good talking to you the other day. So let's get started with the podcast. We're going to talk about several things today, and some of them are going to be traffic stops. We're going to tell you your responsibility as well as the officer's responsibility. We're going to talk about our kids, the kids in our community, in our society, the kids all across America. We're going to tell you how important it is to shield them from a lot of the chaos and drama that they may have to see during a police encounter. And we're going to talk about just police officers in general, why we think the way we do, why we act the way we do. But first, let's get to this traffic stops. This is elementary, people. And every time you see a video on TV that they show somebody getting dragged out of a car, all that could have been avoided. So here's the responsibility of the police officer. If you stop somebody, you walk up to the car. When you approach, if you stop them for doing 95 and a 70, your encounter with them should go like this. Hey, I'm Lieutenant Tim Henderson with the Baton Rouge City Police Department. The reason I stopped you is because you were doing 95 and a 70. At this time, they may ask you to produce your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. And guess what? Hand it to them. Avoid conflict. You're not giving them anything that they're not entitled to. They're entitled to identify you. When you violate the law, the officer has a legal right and really an obligation to identify you, right? So what we need you to do is present your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. If you have a reason why you were driving in such a hastily manner, by all means, tell the cop, hey, officer, I understand that you stopped me for speeding, right? That's an easy way to phrase it. That way you're not admitting anything. I understand that you stopped me for speeding. Is there any chance you could give me a warning? Is there any chance that you could give me a non-moving violation? The officer has quite a bit of discretion on whether to give you a ticket or whether to cite you for something else other than speeding. And a lot of times it's kind of predetermined, because if I'm writing tickets on the interstate because we're having a lot of crashes and we're having a lot of issues where we have to focus on traffic enforcement, maybe I don't give you a break because I'm not giving anybody breaks that day because I'm specifically there for a reason. But just say I'm just randomly there and it's really not that important. I just happen to catch you speeding 95 and a 70, and I could just say, hey, slow it down. I'm going to give you a warning this time. But it's up to the officer. It's not up to you. And you being rude, argumentative, combative, or not listening to what he says is not going to help you at all. So if you want a break, be courteous and ask for a break. If he gives you a break, okay. If he don't, guess what? Whenever he asks you to sign the ticket, you're obligated by law to sign the ticket. The officer can remove you from the vehicle if you don't sign it and take you to jail if he wants to. The signature on a ticket is indicating that you understand why you were stopped and that you understand you have a court date and you're able to pay it in advance if you want. But don't sit here arguing with the officer telling him that you weren't speeding. An officer's not going to stop you if he has a radar gun. He's not going to stop you for speeding. And people always say, well, I was in the middle of all these other cars. How did you pick me out? These laser radars are precise. They can pick anybody out at any point in time. Simple as that. So if there's 10 cars and you're the one that got stopped, it just wasn't your day. But don't make your day worse by refusing to sign or being argumentative and or combative, because this is what escalates. When you see these videos of people getting pulled out of the cars, they're given options. Sign the ticket, get out of the car, whatever the officer is telling them to do. You have got to follow the verbal direction of an officer who's lawfully there giving you orders. If he tells you to step out of the car because you won't sign the ticket and you roll the window up in his face and he breaks the window and gets you out, guess what? You have prompted that response, period. You do not hold court in the middle of the street. It's very simple. The officer is going to tell you your signature is not an admission of guilt, just merely stating that you're going to appear in court. But if you sit there, become aggressive, combative, argumentative, all it's going to do is get you in more and more trouble. So is it really worth you going to jail, you're being tased, or worse, get into a physical encounter and wind up making the officer use lethal force, right? It happens. You see it on TV a lot. All that could have been avoided most of the time by what? Simply complying. They have a saying, comply, don't die. I've heard that. I don't know who came up with it, but it makes sense to me. Sign the ticket, go to court if you want to argue the fact that you were speeding or not speeding. Don't argue it on side of the street. That's not the time or place. So for all those people out there driving, here's what you're obligated to do. You're obligated to identify yourself. You're obligated to sign the ticket. You can go to court and plead your case. Don't plead it on the side of the street. To the officers, uphold your responsibility by indicating why you stopped them, indicating what they did wrong, and then explain to them that this signature is not an admission of guilt. If you meet resistance, keep it calm, keep it casual. I always say ABC, always be cool. No need to escalate it right away. Ma'am, listen, here's the deal. If you don't sign this ticket, then you're going to put me in a situation where I'm going to either have to take you to jail or determine another course of action. But if you sign the ticket, you can go to court and tell them you're not guilty, right? You don't escalate right away and start being aggressive and assertive yourself. Allow them some time to let it absorb. If they start being rude, if they start being argumentative, if they start threatening you, obviously you just react. But there's no need to overreact, because once chaos comes to the scene, it never leaves. I've said that in my podcast. They're creating chaos, and now your chaos and them are colliding, right? So remain as calm and neutral as you can. Then if they put you in a situation where you see they're not going to listen, then by all means, just do what you have to do. And understand this, citizens, if it reaches that level, you have prompted yourself to get in that level of trouble, whatever comes. It could have all been avoided by a simple fact that you could have signed the ticket. And we're going to talk about race while we're here. There's a lot of people, because I was a white cop, right? Well, what'd you stop me for? Just because I'm black? Most of the time, especially in a radar situation, you really don't have an idea who you're stopping, or if you're stopping for a seatbelt or even a traffic violation, you're not necessarily looking at a driver. If you're out doing proactive patrol, you may see who's driving the car because you may be looking for different things. But just in a regular traffic situation, most officers have no idea who they're stopping until they get behind them or until they actually, walk up to them. You can kind of tell who it is. So an officer, he gets out, he stops a car, and he sees long blonde hair. He might say, I'm out with what appears to be a blonde hair female, because that's all he can see is blonde hair as he approaches the vehicle or as he tells you to get out. So you identify as best you can, but people, cops ain't got time to be racist, period. Now, I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just telling you the slight or the likelihood of it happening is closer to zero than it is whatever your mind's thinking. So don't think in these terms, because cops don't think in these terms. Sign the ticket, go home, and live to fight another day in court, or pay the ticket if you did wrong. Ask the district attorney if they'll give you a non-moving violation to help keep it off your record. But don't fight, argue, or be combative in the middle of the street. Do not hold court in the middle of the street. That's the end of that topic. The next topic we're going to talk about is something that's near and dear to me, and that's protecting our children. All right. So officers respond to a lot of calls where children are there. Officers sometimes have to be aggressive, assertive. Sometimes they have to take physical control of people in the vision or the view of kids. And to the officers out there, I'll tell you this. If that's a situation, you do your very best to mitigate the negative interaction that you have or that these children have had to see. You have got to make sure that you are explaining to these kids, hey, mama or daddy or whatever the case may be, they were doing something wrong, and I know it looked kind of bad, but you should explain to these kids that you're not the big evil cop. You're not the guy that came here looking for trouble. You just had to react to the trouble. And you should do your very best to give them clarity and understanding about why you did what you did, and try and lessen the impact, the negative impact, because if you just ignore them and you don't say anything and they just seen you fighting with one of their parents, right? Then you handcuff them and you take them away. Then that's going to be a lasting memory for these kids. And we have got to protect our kids from that type of negative exposure. Is it going to happen? It's going to happen. But you still obligated, in my opinion, as a cop, you still obligated to minimize that negative encounter. So do your very best to give an explanation about why things happen and let them see that you're not the big bad wolf. You're the guy there doing your job, and you were put in a position where you had to do more than you really wanted to do because of, the actual dynamics of the call or whatever. But listen, we got to protect our kids. I'm going to reemphasize that to you. Officers, do not leave a scene where a kid is put in a position where they're hooping and hollering and crying because they're upset about what you did, and you don't take the time to at least explain to them what happened. Now, I'm going to tell you how I know this is effective. I spent 32 years as a cop, and I can tell you from day one, I always did what I could to show kids that, hey, even though this happened, this is why it happened. And you have to kind of get down on their level. Don't stand over them like the big bad wolf. Don't stand over them and make them feel small, even though that's probably not your intention. Put them on a couch or, if they're outside, sit them on the hood of your car, whatever the case may be, whatever the parents allow. If there's another guardian by, just tell them what your intentions are, and that way they can help you. So you're outside, you put them on the hood of the car. That way they're closer to eye level with you, and you just explain to them what's going on. Now, I know this works. Many people have told me, but one story sticks in my mind, and I don't remember if I told it on the podcast before, but I had a situation where I had to fight with a guy. I had to take him into custody, which I did. It wasn't a brutal encounter. It was just a physical encounter, some struggling, some hollering, It would look chaotic to a kid, though. Once I got him handcuffed, got him in the car, I got him calm. I went back and I talked to the little girl, and she was probably 10 or 12 at the time. So I talked to her and I said, hey, I'm sorry you had to see that. I hope that, you understand that this is why that happened. And you saw that he was hollering and arguing, and, he and I did struggle, but he's okay and I'm okay, and nothing, nobody's hurt. So at that point, I could see that she was still worried about him. So I took a moment, I walked back to the car, and I opened the door and I said, hey, bro, your niece, she was a little kid, is worried about you, and I want her to see that you're okay, because I don't want to leave this negative experience, because this is traumatic for kids. And I said, if you're okay, I'm going to let her come and give you a hug and make sure you tell her that you're okay. And he agreed to it. So what I did, opened the door, went in there. She climbed up. She gave him a hug. He was handcuffed. I didn't unhandcuff him. The reality of it is he was handcuffed for a reason. So she gave him a hug. He said, I'm okay, baby, that kind of stuff. And then we went on about our business, and I told her goodbye. At that point, I knew that I'd done all I could to lessen her negative exposure to the encounter, right? She didn't ask to be involved in this situation. It was a product of her environment and where she was at the moment in time. Not her fault. Several years later, probably she wound up being about 18 or 19. They had a big fight at the precinct. I came out there, and eventually I was able to separate two factions that were fighting. So I didn't arrest either one of them, but because I used officer discretion, and I let everybody go. It was two different families, and they weren't like punching, fist fighting at the moment, but it was a little chaotic. I don't want to get too deep into it because it's not the point. But at the end, she said to her mom, I'm sorry, Mom, that's Big Head. And then she came and talked to me. She said, Big Head, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was a little girl, when you took my uncle to jail after y'all had that fight, you let me get in the back seat of the car and hug him. I never forgot that. And I said, well, I'm glad you told me that, because now I know that I'm doing the right thing and trying to make sure that we lessen the impact on these kids. They're vulnerable. We protect kids. We defend kids from predators, but we also have to defend them from negative experiences so that we don't raise another generation of people that hate cops. It's not their fault. Take care of these kids. Officers, if you're not doing it, I'm telling you now, you need to do it. Because if your kid was the one seeing that encounter, you would want somebody to talk to them and try to give them some awareness and understanding and try to help them cope with the situation. So enough about that. Officers, I'm telling you one more time, do your job, do it right, and take care of them kids, period. I know I got a little emotional right there at the end, but man, these kids have got to be protected from predators and from negative experiences. So we're going to move on. The next topic we're going to talk about on this is officers, the way we see things, the way we perceive things, right? So an officer sees things, and they see things based on a lot. They see things based on their instincts, their experiences, their knowledge, their wisdom that they've gained over a long career, right? You go to a restaurant with a cop's mindset is much different than yours. I know everybody says a cop don't want to sit with his back to the door. I get it, but that's just a small fraction of what goes through a cop's mind. Cops think different because we understand that evil has no face. The Grim Reaper doesn't look like anybody. He looks like everybody. You never know if it's a male or female, if it's white, black, or any other race, period. The Grim Reaper looks like everybody. That being said, we don't sit here and focus on everybody, but we see movement, we see mannerisms, we see how people are interacting with other people. We don't always consciously think of certain things, but subconsciously we are aware, very much aware of our surroundings. We're aware of the people. Say we're in a restaurant, we know who's in the booths closest to us, and we scan. We see people all the time. We watch people's movement. We watch how they interact with other people. And like I said, a lot of it's subconscious because, as you're looking around, you're just kind of scanning, just randomly looking around. But we catch little indicators that a lot of people don't catch. So it's not that we're always on high alert, because we're not. We do have the same type of fun as other people. But because we know the big bad wolf is out there, we don't walk around with our heads in the sand. We don't walk around thinking trouble's not going to happen, because trouble happens every day at every location, any day at any location, right? There's nothing that's going to define where crime is going to happen, because it happens everywhere. Everybody knows it happens in churches. It happens in the grocery store. It happens at the airport. It happens at restaurants. It happens anywhere and everywhere. So cops in general, we see things before other people see them. So if you happen to be with a cop and a cop tells you to go this way, don't sit here and question him. Just go that way, because he's trying to get you out of some kind of harm's way. And maybe he don't have time to explain to you, right? So for instance, we're in a situation in Nashville and individuals started kind of harassing me a little bit. I slowed down. My wife walked away. She knew not to sit here and be involved in this encounter. She knew to get away. And I'll tell you why, family members, because it's easier to defend myself in the situation than to have to defend you also. So if you're not in the equation, then my mind's going to be hyper-focused on the situation and not you, right? So she walked away, and I knew that she was a good little ways away, so she was not going to be involved in this encounter at all. Luckily, the encounter didn't become physical, and pretty much it ended with little or no fanfare, right? I told her how glad I was that she walked away. Now, understand this, people. I'm not telling you if you have a spouse that's a cop that you should not help them. I'm telling you, don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. If they need help, then by all means, you can engage, but don't make them have to defend you at the same time. And I know that sounds odd, but like I said, I can be hyper-focused on the situation. If I get in a shootout, I don't want to have to know that I have to stop two perpetrators from hurting you. Let me defend myself and fight this battle alone. And if you need to engage later to help out, then that's fine. And cops, I'll tell you this, when you're out here, educate your family, educate your friends, let them know what's going through your mind, because if you don't tell them, they're going to think of things and they're going to think that, he's always, a lot of people like to say we're cynical. We're not cynical. We're realists. We understand, like I said, we understand what evil looks like because we've experienced it. We've had thousands and thousands and thousands of encounters with, we'll label them bad guys, that has given us an idea of what trouble looks like and what trouble sounds like. So understand that's their mindset, and it's what keeps cops alive. Our instincts keep us alive, and everything that we've learned, tactics, everything that we've learned through all our training keeps us alive. And I always say, if there is doubt, there is no doubt. And what does that mean? If there is doubt, whether there's trouble, there's no doubt there's trouble. So if there is doubt, there is no doubt. Put that in your, cops, y'all hear that saying and put it in your repertoire, because guess what? If there is doubt, there is no doubt. So the last thing we're going to talk about, we're trying to be informative to the citizens. Listen, if your car gets broken into, your house gets broken into, an officer is going to respond. It's called a call for service. They're going to respond. And I'm going to give you an instance. An officer gets dispatched to an apartment complex. He gets there because you said your car got broken into. As he's riding through the parking lot, he sees that 8 other cars got broken into. Okay, his day just got ruined. Y'all don't even know the magnitude of this. This is 4 or 5 hours of writing reports, trying to identify who some of these vehicle owners are, because you can't take a report if you can't find out whose vehicle it is, right? And a lot of times you can't find out. You might have to leave a court and they might have to call you back. So it's really disruptive. Cops, you understand, every day you go to work, nobody promised you an easy day, right? So citizens understand if they're a little bit short, maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe they just came from a scene where another person had gotten shot and killed. They don't have the luxury of going home. They don't have the luxury of taking any additional time off. They just dealt with a dead body in a shooting situation, and the next call they go to is your call. And maybe they're not as personable as they should be, but that doesn't mean, because a lot of people say cops have attitudes, or he had an attitude, or he's an ass. Well, you never know. Sometimes we are like that, and that's just human nature, but sometimes we may be not really as personable as we should be because we just had to tolerate seeing people get killed. We had to fight somebody who was combative, right? We had to write a ticket to somebody who just wanted to argue with us, holler and make our life miserable. So yeah, sometimes officers aren't at the top of their game. Citizens understand we should be professional. And if you see that the situation's not going good, just tell the officer, hey, it seems like, something's on your mind. I'm trying to relay some of this information and you seem indifferent or don't care. And if that's the case, the officer should just take the cue and say, hey, look, man, I'm sorry, I was a little distracted. I just came from a homicide scene and, I'm still trying to move past that. So my bad. It's okay, officers, if you feel in a certain way. Just be honest with people. They're humans. You're human. It's not like we're robots. Officers are not robots, no matter what people think. We have the same emotions, the same feelings, and the same distractions. Now, I'm not saying an officer should be distracted and get himself hurt. Officers, you got to leave as much as you can behind. But if it's on your mind a little bit, it's understandable. So officers, do your job, be professional, and just be compassionate and understanding. People get mad all the time because they want you to take fingerprints. They want you to take DNA. They see these crime scene shows and they think that you should call out CSI. And what people don't understand is, even if I did take fingerprints or DNA, there's only a certain amount. Just say I took DNA. There's only a certain amount of DNA that can be processed for property crimes. So I don't know what the actual figure is, but just say 10 in a month. So every detective combined, not individually, but combined, can send 10 things to the crime lab. It's not that your vehicle burglary wasn't the most important one. It might not be the one that helps solve the most crimes, right? If we get blood off of your car and there's 8 other vehicles that are broken into and there's nothing that's more significant, then maybe we use that blood and we send it away and try to identify the perpetrator. But it don't always happen. But officers, you can take time and explain this to people, The likelihood of us solving this crime, because people like to ask you, the probability is, 30%, 40%, 50%. There's some statistics out there that indicate how often we solve burglaries. And if you don't know the actual figure, just say, it's highly, unless we get video or some other evidence, it's going to be hard. We don't have DNA. We don't have fingerprints. People are okay with you being honest with them, and people understand that these officers might be having a bad day or just left a bad experience. So don't always assume they have an attitude. And look, some people are more friendly than others, just with citizens the same way. You can talk to some people, they'll respond back to you. You can talk to some people and say hi, and they might not even respond to you. So everybody has a different personalities, but communication is the issue here. Let's communicate. If you see things are going wrong one way or another in an encounter with a police officer, by all means, talk to them. But talk to them as a human being, because that's what they are. That badge doesn't make them any better or worse than you. All it does is give them the power to enforce laws in the area that they patrol. So I hope this podcast gave everybody a little insight into a couple of things, just kind of basic concepts of law enforcement, perceptions, and other things. And we'll do some more in the future if I see that we have a good response to this type of podcast. You know, it's kind of hard to do something like this, especially when you're not talking to citizens or whatever. But I tried to be as transparent as I could, and I tried to be as informative as I could. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.